you lay down hoping for silence. Instead, your mind will be peeled back layer by layer until nothing is familiar, not even the words you used to think. Tonight, you will not fall asleep. You will fall apart. The mirror that remembers you are looking at a mirror. You have done this 1,000 times, maybe more. But tonight, I want you to look again, not at your face, but at the fact that you're seeing anything at all. Have you ever considered what a mirror is actually doing? It is not showing you your face. It is reflecting photons that bounce from your skin, filtered and shaped by time, space, and the peculiar constraints of your nervous system. It's not showing you the now. Light takes time. Even the image in the mirror is in the past, if only by nanoseconds. You are always seeing who you were, not who you are. And yet, you trust it without hesitation. But the strangeness doesn't. Stop there. Consider this. If you point a video camera at a mirror and feed its image back into a screen pointed at the mirror, what do you see? A feedback loop, a tunnel of infinite reflections, endlessly repeating, vanishing into the horizon of recursion. Now imagine that instead of a camera and a mirror, it's your thoughts reflecting off your memories, bouncing back into your current perception, which then shapes your future thoughts, which then reconstruct your memories, which then reflect back into your current state again. You are living in a cognitive feedback loop, like a video camera pointed at a mirror. You believe in a linear self. You think there's a stable you looking out, but that's a delusion. Memory is not storage. It is reconstruction. Every time you remember something, you rewrite it. You call this memory, but it's closer to hallucination. When you recall your childhood, you're not remembering the event. You are remembering the last time you remembered it. And each time, it changes. Now stop. Think about every formative moment in your life. Every love, every trauma, every lesson. Every time you remember them, you erode their original structure, like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. By trying to preserve yourself, you have destroyed yourself. Do you know about the ship of Theseus? Replace one plank at a time. When does it stop being the original ship? But the better question is, if the original planks are reassembled somewhere else, which one is you? This is not metaphor. This is you. You are not a static identity. You are a mirror held up to your own decaying memories. And the more you look, the more distorted the image becomes. Have you heard of Capgras delusion? It's a documented neurological disorder where people believe their loved ones have been replaced by imposters. Not because of any visual issue. No, they recognize the face, but because the emotional response tied to that face has vanished. The wire connecting sight to feeling is severed, and without the feeling, the mind assumes a conspiracy. This must be a copy. What if you're suffering from a slow-motion version of Capgras delusion across your entire life? You recognize the people around you, but you don't feel what you used to feel. You recognize the memories, but they no longer feel real. So you begin to suspect the truth. It's all been replaced. Everyone, everything, even you. We live our lives assuming coherence, but coherence is a performance, constantly collapsing backstage. Mirror neurons are responsible for your empathy. But what happens when you mirror yourself? You feel a false echo of recognition, comfort, identity, control. But that comfort is hollow. A simulation of self, built to satisfy your desperate need for continuity. There is no continuity. There is only this moment, and even that is gone before you notice it. You think you're remembering your life, but you're just holding a mirror to a mirror to a mirror. Every time you look, it gets further from the source. Every time you understand yourself, you push the truth one layer deeper into distortion. You trust mirrors because they appear honest. But what if they're just good at pretending? The face you see is not you. The thoughts you have are not yours. The story you've written about who you are is a recursive fiction, sustained by neurological sleight of hand. Look again. Do you recognize the person in the mirror? Or is that someone else an echo, a placeholder, a stranger wearing your past like a costume? What if you've never seen your real face at all? The lie of the present millennial have been told to live in the present. Be here now. But what is the now, exactly? Stop. Try to locate it. The moment you do, it's gone. You can never touch the present. It slips away faster than perception allows. What you experience as now is already over. The delay is built into you. Neuroscientists call it the perceptual present. Your brain lags behind reality by approximately 80 milliseconds. That's the time it takes to process sensory data into a coherent experience. But instead of showing you things in real time, your brain edits the footage into a continuous movie and plays it slightly late, like a badly dubbed foreign film you can't turn off. Your consciousness is not live. You are always behind. The dissection goes deeper. The Libet experiment in the 1980s measured readiness potential's electrical shifts in the brain that precede voluntary movement. Participants were asked to move their fingers and report when they consciously decided to do so. But the electrical signal that initiated the action occurred before the conscious decision. You think you made choices, but by the time you're aware of deciding, your brain has already decided for you. Who, then, is the you that decides? You are a puppet carefully constructed by your biology to believe in its own autonomy. Free will, consciousness, agency all, lagging after the fact, like a narrator describing a train that has already left the station. But perhaps you're okay with that. You accept that your brain operates on delay. You think, fine, but I still experience life. I still feel present. But even this is an illusion, a composite illusion. Your brain bundles moments into a subjective now window of about 2 to 3 seconds. That's why music works. That's why you can recognize a melody, feel a rhythm. But the moment you try to dissect it, to find the start, the end, it vanishes. The now is not a point. It is a lie your brain tells to stitch together sensory data into a film. You can survive. And the stitching can be hacked. Did you know that a sudden stimulus, like a loud sound or a bright flash, can retroactively shift your sense of time? It can insert itself before other things you just saw. Your brain rearranges the timeline to fit a narrative. It's called post-dictive processing. Not predictive, post-dictive reality. Rewritten after the fact. This means you can be tricked into thinking something happened before it actually did. That cause-followed effect. That you saw something you didn't. That you chose something you didn't choose. You are living inside a doctored timeline. But timelines are only useful if you assume there's a continuity between moments. What if there isn't? In quantum physics, particles don't exist in fixed states unless they're observed. Between measurements, they are probability waves, in flux. In SUPERP, OSITION.U2 are in superposition. Your identity, your values, your beliefs, none of them fixed until you collapse the waveform by acting. But what collapses it? Choice? No, you've already learned that your choices come after the action. So what is the observer? You are being observed. Not by God, not by society, but by a deeper mechanism. Attention. Attention is the real observer. And attention is not something you control. It flickers, shifts, vanishes. It obeys novelty, threat, desire, not logic. You don't guide it, you follow it. And where your attention goes, your reality collapses into form. So what does that make? You? A ghost dancing after the echo of its own delayed attention? A backdated narrator to a movie you didn't direct? Let's look deeper. Have you heard of the chronostasis illusion? Look at a clock. and the first second hand tick appears to freeze. Why? Because when your eyes saccade jump from one point to another, your visual system blanks out the motion to prevent blur. Then it fills in the missing data, pretending the image was stable. Your first glimpse of the clock is an edited hallucination. You never saw that second tick freeze. Your brain inserted it after the fact. Every moment is stitched together like that. Your now is a lagging, constructed hallucination, constantly backfilled and edited by a system that is concerned not with truth, but with utility. You don't see what is. You see what keeps you functional, which means you never know if anything is actually happening. You only know what your system lets you believe has already happened. There is no present, only curated delays, and yet you build your identity around the illusion of immediacy. I feel this now. I see this now. But you are merely reacting to what was never to what is. You are the echo of a machine you can't see, acting on data that's already cold. Tell me, how can you be sure you're conscious right now, if consciousness always arrives too late? What if you haven't woken up yet? Memory is a prison you build from lies you think memory is sacred, a record, a vault, a place you can return to when the present frays and the future terrifies. But memory is not a vault. It's a courtroom where truth is fabricated by a corrupt witness, a biased jury, and an unreliable camera, all played by the same actor. You. Let's begin with the facts, not opinions, not interpretations. Facts. In 1974, Elizabeth Loftus conducted an experiment where participants were shown a video of a car accident. Afterward, they were asked a simple question. How fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? Others were asked, when they hit each other? Those who heard smashed estimated higher speeds and worse were more likely to falsely remember seeing broken glass. The single word smashed rewrote what they remembered. Memory does not record, it reconstructs. Every act of remembering is an act of editing, and each edit is susceptible to contamination, suggestion, bias, emotion, even language. Do you remember your first heartbreak? The color of the room? The exact words they said? You believe you do. But what if those colors, those sounds, those feelings weren't there at all? What if you've simply told the story so many times out loud or in your head that it's no longer a memory, but a fiction rehearsed into belief? And what is belief except memory you've stopped questioning? There is a disorder called confabulation. People suffering from it invent detailed memories to fill in the blanks of forgotten events without realizing they're lying. But here's the problem. You do this too, all the time. Not just in illness, in health, in normalcy. Every gap, every blur, every lost detail, your brain fills it in, automatically, with false precision. The more confident you are in a memory, the more likely it's wrong. The Dies-Roediger-McDermott paradigm demonstrates this. Participants are given lists of related words like bed, pillow, rest, tired, dream. Later, they confidently recall hearing the word sleep, a word never shown. The mind doesn't retrieve. It invents consistency. Memory is pattern, not content. And patterns lie. Let me remind you, you base your identity on memory. You believe you're the same person who experienced your childhood, your past traumas, your triumphs. But if those memories are corrupted, edited, invented, falsified, then who are you? You are a continuity built from forgeries. The hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for long-term memory, is deeply tied to imagination. When you remember, the same structures activate as when you imagine something that never happened. Memory and fantasy are indistinguishable at the neural level. What you remember is Hakomi's hallucinated guess. Have you ever had a dream so vivid it felt real for hours? That's your brain showing you what it's capable of fabricating entire realities, complete with emotion, logic, and narrative. Now ask yourself, how do you know your waking memories are any more reliable? You don't. Autobiographical memory, the kind you think defines you, isn't even stored in one place. It's scattered across sensory regions: smell, sound, emotion, image. When you remember, you don't pull it from a file, you reconstruct it from fragments. You are assembling your identity out of broken glass and then staring into the mirror to find meaning in the reflection. But the mirror lies. Think about déjà vu, the eerie sensation that you've lived this moment before. It's not time travel. It's not mysticism. It's your brain glitching, mistaking the present for the past. A temporal overlap, a wiring error. You trust your memory more than your senses, so when the wires cross, you believe it must be real. You mistake electrical noise for evidence. How many of your beliefs, then, are built on such noise? You hate people because of things you think they did. You love people for moments that may never have happened. You mourn a past that may not have existed. You fear a repetition of events that never occurred. You are haunted by memories that may not be yours. Consider the Mandela effect. Entire populations falsely remember events that never happened, like Nelson Mandela dying in prison, or the Berenstain Bears being spelled Berenstein. The internet blames parallel universes. Science blames collective false memory. But you should blame something more terrifying: your own trust in your mind. What if every memory you have, every person, every wound, every kiss was stitched together from impressions, guesses, cultural artifacts, and emotional biases? Then you are not you. You are a fictional protagonist in a novel, constantly rewritten by a blind editor with a broken typewriter. And still, you defend your past as sacred. You say, "But I remember." That sentence has no meaning. I remember only means I believe I once believed. Belief is not evidence. Memory is not truth. Try this. Think of your earliest memory. Now ask, were you told that story by your parents? Have you seen a photo? Is it possible you only remember it because you've imagined it so many times? Memory is suggestion plus time plus repetition. Nothing more. So what happens when you lose memory? Not just to dementia or age, but in the slow erosion of lived experience. You forget a face, a name, a street, a scent, and yet you remain. Which means your identity is not memory. It is the illusion of memory, a lingering echo, and echoes don't choose what to reflect. Tell me, if you are built from broken memories, hallucinated certainties, and fabricated pasts, then who or what is remembering you? Time is a story you tell to the dead. You think time is linear. Past, present, future. You were born. You lived. You will die. But that's just the narrative your biology feeds you, so you don't collapse under the weight of eternal simultaneity. Time is not real. At least, not in the way you think it is. Einstein told us that simultaneity is relative, that there is no now across the universe. What is happening now for you could already be in the future or the past for someone else, depending on their velocity and position. There is no global clock. Time does not pass. It accumulates differently depending on where and how you exist. If there is no universal present, then your now is a local hallucination. You live as if you're moving through time. You're not. You are a body moving through space, inside a brain that slices up change into digestible illusions of before and after. But you're not a traveler. You're a prisoner of your particular slice. Let's look deeper. In 1905, Einstein's theory of special relativity destroyed the idea of absolute time. Two observers moving at different speeds will experience time differently. This is not metaphor. It's measurable. It's proven. We have sent atomic clocks into orbit and watched time move more slowly for them than for us. Astronauts age slower than we do, by tiny but real amounts. Your body experiences time based on gravity and motion, which means time is not universal. It's subjective. If time is subjective, then how can you trust memory? How can you trust aging? How can you trust the very idea of cause and effect? You can't. Do you remember the twin paradox? One twin stays on Earth. The other travels near the speed of light and returns. The spacefaring twin is younger. But from their perspective, they were still. It was Earth that moved. The paradox isn't that they age differently. The paradox is that each one believes the other is the one who changed. And they're both right. And they're both wrong. Time is not the arrow you think it is. But let's go deeper, because it gets worse. The block universe theory. Heard of it? It's a model in physics that suggests time doesn't flow at all. The past, present, and future all exist equally. Right now, your birth is still happening. So is your death. So is the moment you are reading this sentence. All moments are frozen, like frames in a film reel. Nothing is moving. Your consciousness simply scans through them, frame by frame, creating the illusion of motion. So what is the present? A single frame you are trapped inside. Not special, not unique. Just one among infinite frozen moments. You are not moving through time. You are being read by something you will never see. But what's reading you? Entropy. The only reason you perceive time as flowing forward is because entropy increases. Things fall apart. Order becomes disorder. Ice melts. Stars die. Memories fade. You trust the arrow of time because things decay. But entropy doesn't care about direction. It just is. You don't live forward. You live in reverse, watching everything disintegrate around you and calling it progress. You think the past causes the present, but maybe the present causes the past. That's not wordplay. In retrocausality, a theory in quantum mechanics, future events can influence the past. There are real experiments suggesting that how you choose to observe a particle can affect how it behaved before you observed it. That your present action rewrites history. So when did anything really happen? Are you shaping your past with every choice you make now? And what if time is even stranger? Julian Barber, a physicist, proposes that time is an illusion, and what we experience as motion is just change in configuration. Each moment is a different arrangement of the universe. No flow, no passage. Just endless snapshots, disconnected, appearing to you as narrative only because your consciousness links them. You are not moving through time. You are flickering between frozen states, like a character in a flipbook believing in destiny. Still think you're free? Then ask yourself, what if the future already exists? What if your death has already happened? What if your final breath is frozen in a frame, waiting to be scanned? You never escape. We bury the dead in chronological order, but that's for our comfort, not theirs. The dead don't experience time, and neither do you. You experience change, and you call it time. But change is not time. It is evidence that time is a lie you tell yourself so your decay doesn't feel like destruction. So here's a question. If every moment of your life past, present, future exists eternally in the structure of space-time, and nothing is truly lost, only static, only unreachable, only frozen, then what does it mean to die? The self is a story you are forced to inherit. You say, I, like it means something solid. But who exactly are you referring to? The person reading these words? The person you were yesterday? The child you used to be? The dreamer in your mind? The face in your passport? Your Instagram bio? Your inner voice? You point to this cluster of memories, feelings, preferences, and call it me. But what if the self is just a linguistic convenience, not a being? A placeholder. A label for a process. The Buddhists were right. There is no self. There is only the illusion of self-continuity, sustained by recursive thought. Let's begin with the default mode network, DMN, a system of brain regions that activates when your mind wanders. It's the part of you responsible for self-referential, thinking, daydreaming, imagining your future, remembering your past. It's the you generator. Shut it down and your sense of self begins to dissolve. Meditators aim for this. Psychotics fall into it. Psychedelics rip it apart. When the DMN quiets, so does the I. But the deeper question is, why does the self feel so real? It's because you mistake narrative for truth. You remember your life as a story. But your story isn't told by a single author. It's a committee. Your body writes one chapter. Your culture writes another. Your language sculpts every sentence. And you? You're just the reader who came in halfway through. You didn't choose your name. You didn't choose your language. You didn't choose your family, your early memories, your wiring. The part of you that makes choices is built from things you didn't choose. So what does it mean to say you chose anything? Your moral compass was built from scripts given to you by others, by religions, media, trauma, education. And yet, you still believe you are a singular, free-willed agent acting from some internal core. You're not. Split brain. Experiments have revealed something devastating. When the connection between the brain's hemispheres is severed, the two sides behave independently. One side sees something, acts on it. The other side, cut off from the stimulus, is asked to explain why, and it invents a reason. With total confidence, you confabulate the self. You explain decisions you never really made, and this isn't limited to brain injuries. It's happening in you, constantly. Your conscious mind is a post-fact narrator, not a decision maker. It's a spin doctor. Your real decisions are made deep in the preconscious layers, based on habit, impulse, conditioning. You don't guide the ship, you just justify the direction. Still think you're real? The philosopher Daniel Dennett calls the self a center of narrative gravity. Not a thing, but a pattern like a whirlpool in a river. Real in the sense that it has shape, but not real in the sense that it exists independently. So here's the question. If the self is just a pattern of cognition, then what happens when that pattern changes? Are you the same person who read the first sentence of this section? Your cells have been dying and replacing themselves continuously. Your personality shifts over years. Your beliefs evolve. Your memories fade and rewrite. So where is the continuity? Is there even such a thing? No, there is only momentum. A story that keeps writing itself to avoid collapse. But what happens when that story is interrupted? Alzheimer's patients lose memory of who they are, but continue to live. Are they still the same person? If identity depends on memory, then memory loss is death. But if the body still breathes and smiles and cries, what is that? A corpse with language? A living thing without a story? And what about you? You define yourself by your traumas, but trauma fragments memory. It rewires the brain. The self that survived is not the same as the self that was harmed. You are a ghost haunting the echo of an injury. You define yourself by desire. But where did your desires come from? Do you want what you want because of some pure inner nature? Or were your desires sculpted by social media, advertising, family scripts, dopamine loops? Even your love isn't yours. The chemicals of attraction, the template of attachment styles, the familiarity bias. You fall in love with patterns, not people. So if your story was ghostwritten, if your decisions are post-fact rationalizations, if your I is just a narrative PLA CEHOLD, who is. Reading this? Not the self. That's a myth, not the soul. That's a metaphor, just neurons running a simulation of being someone, desperate to believe it's not alone. But if there's no you behind the thoughts, no author behind the story, no soul behind the eyes ... then who exactly is pretending to exist? Language is a cage. You mistake for a window. You believe you use language to describe the world. But what if language doesn't describe reality? What if it creates it? What if everything you think is real is just the side effect of having? Names for things? Let's start with what you're doing right now. You're not absorbing truth. You're decoding a string of symbols, arbitrary marks, strung together into sounds, assembled into syntax, arranged into meaning by rules you didn't invent. And yet, you trust the results. You trust language like a priest trusts his God. But language is not neutral. Language is a filter, a shaper, a jailer. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein said, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." What you cannot name, you cannot think. What you cannot describe, you cannot notice. You believe in objects, in time, in self, because your language forces you to. If your native tongue required you to speak in process rather than form, you would see a world in flux, not in pieces. If your grammar didn't demand subjects and verbs, you might not believe in stable agents or fixed identities at all. Think about this. The Pirahu people of the Amazon have no words for exact numbers, not even one or two. They use approximate terms like few or many, and as a result, they can't perform basic arithmetic. They literally experience quantity differently, not because they're primitive, because their language doesn't carve the world into the same shapes. So what shapes does your language force onto you? You say, "I am sad," as if sadness is something you possess. But in other languages, the phrasing would be more like, "Sadness is upon me." You don't own it. It passes through you. One view implies identity, the other, transience. One traps you, the other lets you go. And what about time? Some indigenous languages don't use tenses like past or future. Their speakers view time as location, not movement. You don't go to the past. You are in it. That single shift collapses your Western obsession with linearity. Language sculpts your perception, and your perception builds your prison. You say tree, and you think you see a tree, but you don't. You see a swirling mess of photons striking your retina, interpreted by an evolutionary machine trained to prioritize survival. The word tree reduces that chaos into a thing, a concept, a noun. And in that moment, the world flattens. You don't see the thing. You see the word. This is called the symbol grounding problem. How do words acquire meaning? If every word is defined by other words, how does meaning ever begin? If tree means a tall plant with leaves, then plant must mean something. And so must tall and leaves. You end up chasing definitions in an infinite loop of self-reference. No word points to anything real. They only point to other words. Language is a tautology, pretending to be a mirror. You believe in truth, in facts, in logic. But these are all linguistic systems. Math is a language. Logic is a language. Scientific theories are built from sentences. But sentences require symbols, and symbols are arbitrary. So you build an empire of reason atop shifting sands of invented sound. Even your most intimate experiences are filtered through this lens. When you cry, you say, "I'm overwhelmed." But you're not describing emotion. You're labeling it, collapsing it into categories handed to you by culture, family, media. Before you knew the word grief, what did you feel? Before you knew the word love, how did you process that chaos in your chest? Did those feelings exist before you named them? Or did naming them invent them? Consider infants. They scream, flail, tremble. They feel everything, but they don't know anything. Not until someone points and says, happy, angry, hungry. Language doesn't just label reality. It teaches you what to see, and what not to. You do not see what your language cannot describe. You do not think what your grammar cannot allow. You are blind, not because your eyes are closed, but because your language has painted over the windows. And it's worse than blindness. Because language doesn't just distort what you see. It creates a false confidence that you do see clearly. That tree equals tree. That self equals self. That words are tiny mirrors of the world, but words are shadows. Not of objects, but of illusions. And when you pray, when you scream, when you say, I love you, or I hate myself, do you even know what you're saying? Or are you just assembling culturally sanctioned sound patterns and calling that meaning? Meaning is not in the words. Meaning is in the space where words fail. So ask yourself, if every thought you have must pass through language, and language is flawed, biased, recursive, blind, how can you ever know anything true? What is left when even your thoughts lie to you in your own voice? Perception is a hallucination you agree to call real. Open your eyes. Look at the world around you. You see colors, shapes, motion, depth. You hear sounds. You feel your body in space. You call this perception. You call this reality. What you are experiencing is not the world. It is your brain's best guess of what might be out there. You are hallucinating, constantly, continuously. And because your hallucinations match those of others, roughly you call them real. You call them shared. But shared delusion is still delusion. Let's begin where science confirms what your instincts refuse to admit. Vision. You do not see the world directly. Your eyes capture limited light data, just a sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum. You are blind to ultraviolet, infrared, X-rays, gamma rays. Most of what exists passes through you without even a whisper of awareness. You walk through invisible oceans and believe you are dry. Even the colors you do see are lies. Red is not a thing that exists in the world. It is a particular wavelength. But your brain adds the sensation of red. It's not out there. It's an invention, a perceptual gloss. The apple does not possess redness. You project it onto the apple. Now let's go deeper. Have you heard of the Canissa triangle? 3 Pac-Man shapes arranged just so, and suddenly you see a bright triangle in the center, a triangle that doesn't exist. Your brain inserts edges that aren't there. It fills in blanks. It invents boundaries. You are not seeing what is. You are seeing what your brain predicts should be there. This is not a bug. This is the architecture of perception itself. Your brain is a prediction machine. It receives fragmented input and guesses what caused it. Then it creates a hallucination that fits. Only if the guess is wildly off do you notice the error. You are seeing what your brain expects to see, not what's there. This is called predictive processing, and it governs everything. Not just sight, sound, touch, even pain. In experiments, patients given placebo pills with no active ingredients still experience relief because the brain predicts healing and fabricates the perception to match. Your beliefs control your sensations. Now, consider the rubber hand illusion. A subject's real hand is hidden from view while a fake rubber hand is placed in front of them. Both hands are stroked simultaneously. After a few moments, the subject begins to feel that the rubber hand is their own. Their brain adopts the fake hand. If your brain can be tricked into feeling ownership over plastic, if your senses can be so easily deceived, then what anchors you to this body? What makes you sure this body is yours? There is no boundary between perception and hallucination. The difference is merely agreement. When schizophrenics report voices or visions, you call it delusion. When mystics hear the voice of God, you call it revelation. When you remember your mother's voice in a dream, you call it comfort. All are hallucinations. The only difference is consensus. Let's talk about sound. You think sound is real, but sound is just vibration air molecules pushing against each other. There is no sound in space, no sound in a vacuum. Sound only exists because your brain interprets pressure waves as tone. Your favorite song? An electrical simulation in your auditory cortex. It doesn't exist outside you. You will never hear anything but your own brain. Touch? The same. There is no such thing as direct contact. At the atomic level, you never actually touch anything. Electromagnetic repulsion keeps your atoms from truly colliding with other matter. What you feel is the illusion of contact and neural guess, synthesized from sensory input and prior experience. Your whole body is a phantom limb. And what about time? Perception of time changes based on attention, fear, boredom, novelty. Time slows when you're terrified, speeds up when you're busy. It bends in dreams. It freezes in trauma. If time were real, it would not be so easily warped by mere experience. So again, what are you perceiving? Not the world. You are perceiving your model of the world. A model based on partial data, cognitive bias, emotional filters, and evolutionary shortcuts. You call it reality because you've never known anything else. But what if you're wrong? What if all of this is a closed feedback loop? Perception shaped by belief, belief shaped by memory, memory shaped by emotion, emotion shaped by perception. A snake devouring its own eyes. You say, I know what I saw. But you don't. You know what you believed you saw. You know what your brain told you it had seen. And your brain lies. Not maliciously, just efficiently. It simplifies, erases, sharpens, recolors, warps. What you call perception is a hallucination, tuned for survival. So what happens when survival no longer requires the truth? What if the world is nothing like what you think it is? And worse, what if it never was? Consciousness is the trick you play on yourself. You think you're awake. You think you're aware. But you are the witness behind the eyes, the voice behind the voice, the core of being. You say, I am conscious, as if that settles anything. But consciousness is not presence. It is theater. It is illusion. It is the magician's hand waving while the trick happens out of view. Start here. You are not the one in control. We've already seen that decisions arise in the brain before you're aware of making them. The Libet experiment exposed it. Other replications have confirmed it. The readiness potential the brain's quiet signal to act fires before you experience any conscious choice. So what then is consciousness doing? It narrates. It rationalizes. It takes the baton after the sprint and pretends it ran the race. But maybe that's still too soft. Consider this. Your consciousness may be a post hoc hallucination, a byproduct of perception and memory designed to stitch discontinuous states into the story of you. It doesn't do anything. It explains things, and not well, like a court stenographer who thinks they're the judge. The philosopher Thomas Metzinger argues, nobody has ever been or had a self. He means this literally. The self you think you are is a model transparent and incomplete projected by the brain to make interaction with the world coherent. You are a simulation running on gray matter. The simulation has no access to its own code. Let's consider split brain patients again. After corpus callosum severance, the two hemispheres operate independently. One can believe in God, the other not. One can smile while the other frowns. Each claims to be I. Each believes it is the center of awareness, Dot. So which one is conscious? Or, more terrifyingly, are both? And if so, then what makes you believe your unity is real? It's just efficiency. The illusion of a single self arises because it works. It helps coordinate memory, behavior, survival. But illusion by utility is still illusion. Just because it's useful doesn't mean it's true. Consider blindsight. Patients with cortical damage to their visual systems report being blind. But when asked to guess the direction of a light or the location of an object, they perform significantly above chance. They see without awareness. The reverse is also true. Visual hallucinations can occur without input. The perception of sight, with no external cause. The brain creates the image, and you call it seeing. So what makes awareness real if perception can happen without it? Then comes anesthesia. Patients under deep anesthesia deemed unconscious have shown brain responses to speech, music, even their own name. Later, they have no recollection. But during the event, parts of the brain remained active. So were they conscious? Or are you only conscious if you remember being so? If that's the case, then your past might be littered with moments of lost awareness. Blank states, reboots, mini-deaths. You stitch them together with stories, but the gaps remain. Now, examine your dreams. In dreams, you experience rich sensations, emotion, logic, memory, all constructed by your brain, all accepted as reality. You walk through fire, you fly, you scream, and you believe. Because consciousness doesn't require external validation. It only requires plausibility. If dreams feel real while you're inside them and only reveal their absurdity after waking, then how do you know this moment isn't a dream you haven't woken from yet? What test would you use to tell? Do you remember the Turing test? Designed to measure whether a machine can convincingly imitate a human. But here's the twist. Your consciousness may be passing the Turing test on itself, fooling itself into believing it's the real observer, recursive, self-validating. Empty. What if you're not conscious, but only conscious of being conscious? An echo mistaken for a voice. Even deeper, integrated information theory, IIT, proposes that consciousness arises from the degree of integrated complexity in a system. Not a soul, not a light switch, but a threshold. When information flows and loops back on itself with sufficient density, awareness emerges, which means consciousness is not unique, not yours, not sacred. It is a side effect of complexity, a flame that flickers briefly when conditions align. And when the loops break sleep, trauma, death, it vanishes. So what do you cling to? This feeling of I am. But that feeling is just another perception. Another neural event, like hearing a bell or smelling smoke. A signal, temporary, unreliable, manufactured. You are not the light inside the house. You are the flicker of that light against a window in the dark. What if consciousness is not what you have, but the dream your brain tells itself before waking into death? Death is not what ends you, it's what you've already forgotten. You say you fear death, but you misunderstand what it is. You think death is an event, a moment, a final breath. You think it happens to you at some fixed point in the future, but death is not something that happens. Death is a condition, a state, and it is already inside you. You are not waiting to die. You are dying. Continuously. Every second. Let's begin with biology. Right now, more cells are dying in your body than are being born. Apoptosis-programmed cell death is how your body stays alive. Your immune system kills billions of its own cells daily. Neurons die from disuse. Synapses decay. You lose 30,000 to 50,000 skin cells every minute. You are a graveyard walking in denial. Your body is entropy in motion, but death is not. Limited to biology, consider psychological death, the silent decay of identity. The person you were 5 years ago? Gone. You have different beliefs now. Different memories. That version of you has ceased to exist, and yet you mourn nothing. You call it growth. But growth is just death with better branding. You are a series of ghosts, possessing a single body. Now let's talk about the moment of death. You fear the physical cessation. You imagine it as a black wall, a fall into non-being. But here's the paradox. You cannot experience non-existence. By definition, the moment you die is a moment you cannot witness. There is no edge, no curtain, just disappearance, and you've already been there. Every night, you vanish. In deep, dreamless sleep stage N3, you become nothing. No thought, no feeling, no time. You go offline, not unconscious, not dreaming, non-existent. And yet, every morning, you return and call that normal. Why do you not mourn your nightly annihilation? Because continuity is a story you tell yourself after the fact. But during deep sleep, there is no story, no you, no witness. Just the absence of awareness, pretending it never left. You are already rehearsing death every night, without fear. Let's go deeper. Have you ever fainted? Had anesthesia? Been knocked unconscious? Where did you go during that gap? There was no passage of time. One moment you existed. The next, you are waking up. So what makes you believe death is different? You won't feel dead. You'll feel nothing because there will be no you to feel it. But what's worse is that your existence now is already riddled with death. The memories you've lost? Dead. The people you no longer remember? Dead to you. The words you've spoken and forgotten? Buried in time. You are shedding lives with every second. And still you walk as if you are whole. Even the continuity of your mind is a lie. Your sense of now refreshes every few seconds. Your attention blinks, stutters, restarts. Consciousness is not a river, it's a strobe light. You flicker into awareness, then vanish. Again and again. Most of you is already gone. And yet, you ask what happens after death. You never ask what happened before birth, because you suspect the answer. Nothing. No awareness, no memory, no I. You did not mourn the billions of years before you were born. Why should you mourn the billions? After? And if there is no continuity, if your mind is just a temporary pattern of energy, then your fear is not of death, but of truth, that there is no you to lose. Only the illusion of someone who once dreamed they were alive. And maybe you are that. Dream, or maybe the dream is already over, and you are just the echo. But if death is not something that happens, and you are already dying, already blinking in and out, already erasing yourself with every heartbeat, then what exactly are you afraid of losing? Free will is a ritual you perform to feel innocent. You say you choose. You say, I made that decision, as if there was a you, separate from the world, steering the wheel. You believe in free, well, not because it makes sense, but because without it, you'd have to admit nothing you've done was ever yours to begin with. Let's strip the comfort away. Start with the neuroscience. In the 1980s, Benjamin Libet's experiments revealed something horrifying. When participants decided to move their hands, the brain had already begun preparing the movement before they reported choosing to do so. The readiness potential came first. Conscious intention came second. Choice was after the fact. You don't decide. You become aware of a decision your brain already made. Many tried to dismiss Libet, called it a quirk, a timing error, but the replications kept coming. Brain scans, reaction tests, electrical readings, They all whispered the same thing. You are not the author. But let's look deeper. Why did you read this? Why did you nod at that sentence? Or flinch at another? Did you choose your emotional responses? Did you choose the childhood that shaped your preferences? The genes that wired your temperament? The first heartbreak that bent your trust? The book that shifted your worldview? The parent who taught you shame? No, you inherited a chain of causes, all unchosen. You are a puppet arguing with its strings. Every belief you hold came from somewhere: parent, teacher, trauma, environment. Even rebellion is shaped by the thing it resists. Your choices emerge from systems you didn't design. A child born in war does not choose hatred. A child born in peace does not choose forgiveness. Each carries out a script written in scars and doubts. Lullabies, you call it will, but it's inertia. Philosophers have tried to save you. They invented compatibilism, the idea that free will can exist even if the universe is deterministic, as long as you act according to your desires. But where do desires come from? You didn't choose to desire what you desire. You discovered those desires like ruins under your feet, and now you worship them. If you were given someone else's mind different memories, different impulses, you would make different choices. You know this, and yet you blame yourself or others, as if we are sovereign agents in sovereign skins. You punish criminals. You shame addicts. You moralize, condemn, praise. But if there is no true choice, then there is no true guilt. And no true virtue, only the roll of the dice. But here's the twist. You must believe in free will. You're wired to. It helps social cohesion. It gives life a plot. If you believed you were just an unfolding algorithm, you'd fall into paralysis or, worse, apathy. So your mind constructs a theater. It casts a self as protagonist, a ghost with agency, a chooser, a knower. But there is no ghost, just the gears of biology spinning in silence. You say, but I could have done otherwise. No, you couldn't. Given the exact same conditions, the same brain state, the same past, you would have done the same thing. Every time. The illusion of choice arises only after the act. You explain it. You justify it. You narrate, but you do not choose. Even randomness doesn't save you. Quantum indeterminacy may introduce unpredictability into the universe, but randomness is not freedom. You are not free if your decisions are dice rolls. That's not agency. That's chaos. And yet, without free will, how do we live? How do we forgive? How do we judge? How do we love when love is not chosen but compelled? You don't. You perform the rituals anyway. You praise. You blame. You hope. You plan. Because the play must go on, even if the actors are unaware they are reading from a script. The philosopher Galen Strawson called it the basic argument. You can't be morally responsible for anything, because to be truly responsible, you'd need to have chosen your nature. But you didn't choose your nature. So everything after is a chain reaction. You were thrown into this, naked, programmed, blind. And now you smile and say, I meant to. You didn't. So what remains of you once the chooser is gone? What is a person if not a pilot? What is left? In the cockpit, when the hands are just twitching reflexes, and the voice is just a recording of a recording of a recording. And if you are not the one steering this thing, then who is? Truth is a corpse you keep dressing in language. You say you want the truth. You even believe you have some. About yourself, about the world, about what's real. But what you want is not truth. What you want is certainty. Something to anchor you. Something to believe in that won't dissolve in your hands. But truth isn't solid. Truth rots. Start with something simple. Perception. We've already established that you hallucinate your way through the world. Your senses are biased. Your memory is false. Your attention is selective. So any truth you find must pass through filters already bent. You're not discovering the truth. You're fabricating a version of it you can live with. But go deeper. Scientific truth, objective reality, the gold standard of fact, it changes. Once, ulcers were caused by stress. Now we know it's bacteria. Once, the universe was eternal and static. Then it was expanding. Now it's maybe expanding into something else entirely. Once, Newton gave us laws. Then Einstein broke them. Now quantum mechanics breaks everything else. Science doesn't move toward truth. It moves through error. Every theory is a placeholder waiting to be disproven. And yet, you crave conclusions. You want the last page, not the draft. You want the comfort of a final answer. But the universe offers none. It gives you paradoxes, uncertainty, recursion, a house with no floor. Consider Gödel's incompleteness theorems. In any consistent formal system capable of expressing arithmetic, there are true statements that can't be proven within the system. There are truths that can never be known. And worse, if the system is complete, it cannot be consistent. If it's consistent, it cannot be complete. You cannot have all truths. You must choose which ones to abandon. Now consider language again. You say, "This is true," but every word in that sentence is loaded. This implies a thing when all things are processes. Is implies being when being is fluid. True implies correspondence, but to what? To your perception? To consensus? To logic? You are speaking in riddles and pretending they are laws. And when you say something is true, do you mean it is useful? Do you mean it is consistent with experience? Do you mean it matches a model? Or do you mean you feel it in your bones? Because each of those is a different definition. And all are suspect. Even mathematics, the supposed language of truth, is built on unprovable axioms, assumptions, beliefs. At the base of every mathematical proof is a leap of faith. And faith has no place in truth. But here's the deeper cruelty. Even when you think you've found something true, something real, it changes the moment you look at it. This is not metaphor. This is physics. In quantum mechanics, the observer effect is real. The act of measurement collapses the wave function. Before observation, a particle is in a superposition of states. It could be here or there. After observation, it's one or the other. The truth does not pre-exist your observation. Your observation creates it, which means there is no truth without you. And yet, you are the least reliable witness. A liar in the courtroom of the fee, cosmos. And then there's history. You think it's a record. It's not. It's a construction, written by victors, shaped by omissions, erased, rewritten, sanitized. Every textbook is a eulogy delivered by the last one standing. The past isn't what happened. It's what was allowed to be remembered. Even personal truth fails. When you say, "I was hurt," you're not speaking about the event. You're speaking about its meaning. And meaning is malleable. You change it over time. You reinterpret. You reframe. You lie to yourself, for yourself, with yourself. You perform autopsies on truths you already buried. So what, then, is truth? A snapshot of temporary coherence. A corpse dressed in the language of objectivity, paraded through the mind like a relic of something that never really lived. And if that's what truth is, fluid, broken, context-bound, observer-dependent, decaying, then what happens to all the things you've built your identity upon? Your beliefs, your principles, your sense of justice, your definition of good. If truth itself is fractal and dying, what do you trust when everything that feels real can be dismantled? Truth is a corpse. You keep dressing in language you say you want the truth. You even believe you have some. About yourself, about the world, about what's real. But what you want is not truth. What you want is certainty. Something to anchor you. Something to believe in that won't dissolve in your hands. But truth isn't solid. Truth rots. Start with something simple. Perception. We've already established that you hallucinate your way through the world. Your senses are biased. Your memory is false. Your attention is selective. So any truth you find must pass through filters already bent. You're not discovering the truth. You're fabricating a version of it you can live with. But go deeper. Scientific truth? Objective reality? The gold standard of fact? It changes. Once, ulcers were caused by stress. Now we know it's bacteria. Once, the universe was eternal and static. Then it was expanding. Now it's maybe expanding into something else entirely. Once, Newton gave us laws. Then Einstein broke them. Now quantum mechanics breaks everything else. Science doesn't move toward truth. It moves through error. Every theory is a placeholder waiting to be disproven. And yet, you crave conclusions. You want the last page, not the draft. You want the comfort of a final answer. But the universe offers none. It gives you paradoxes, uncertainty, recursion, a house with no floor. Consider Digel's incompleteness theorems. In any consistent formal system capable of expressing arithmetic, there are true statements that can't be proven within the system. There are truths that can never be known. And worse, if the system is complete, it cannot be consistent. If it's consistent, it cannot be complete. You cannot have all truths. You must choose which ones to abandon. Now consider language again. You say, "This is true," but every word in that sentence is loaded. This implies a thing when all things are processes. Is implies being when being is fluid. True implies correspondence, but to what? To your perception? To consensus? To logic? You are speaking in riddles and pretending they are laws. And when you say something is true, do you mean it is useful? Do you mean it is consistent with experience? Do you mean it matches a model? Or do you mean you feel it in your bones? Because each of those is a different definition. And all are suspect. Even mathematics, the supposed language of truth, is built on unprovable axioms, assumptions, beliefs. At the base of every mathematical proof is a leap of faith. And faith has no place in truth. But here's the deeper cruelty. Even when you think you found something true, something real, it changes the moment you look at it. This is not metaphor. This is physics. In quantum mechanics, the observer effect is real. The act of measurement collapses the wave function. Before observation, a particle is in a superposition of states. It could be here or there. After observation, it's one or the other. The truth does not pre-exist your observation. Your observation creates it, which means there is no truth without you. And yet, you are the least reliable witness. A liar in the courtroom of the cosmos. And then there's history. You think it's a record. It's not. It's a construction. Written by victors. Shaped by omissions. Erased, rewritten, sanitized. Every textbook is a eulogy delivered by the last one standing. The past isn't what happened. It's what was allowed to be remembered. Even personal truth fails. When you say, "I was hurt," you're not speaking about the event. You're speaking about its meaning. And meaning is malleable. You change it over time. You reinterpret. You reframe. You lie to yourself, for yourself, with yourself. You perform autopsies on truths you already buried. So what then is truth? A snapshot of temporary coherence. A corpse dressed in the language of objectivity, paraded through the mind like a relic of something that never really lived. And if that's what truth is, fluid, broken, context-bound, observer-dependent, decaying, then what happens to all the things you've built your identity upon? Your beliefs, your principles, your sense of justice, your definition of good. If truth itself is fractal and dying, what do you trust when everything that feels real can be dismantled? The self is a costume worn by the void. You say, "This is me." But what is me? Is it your body, your voice, your name, the voice in your head narrating this sentence? Or is it something deeper? A soul? A continuity? The truth is simpler and more horrifying. You are not a thing. You are not even a someone. You are a process, a recursive illusion, a user interface constructed to survive in a world too chaotic to navigate as is. The self, the one you fight for, protect, define, is not real. It's a model, an approximation, a placeholder, a mask so convincing that even the void beneath it starts to believe. Let's peel it back. Your body is not you. Every atom in it changes over time. You are not composed of the same matter you were 7 years ago. You are rebuilt cell by cell, moment by moment, yet you persist in the fiction of a continuous identity. Why? Because the mind craves stability more than it craves truth. Now look at your thoughts. Are they yours? Do they arise from within you? Or do they appear unbidden, unchosen, fully formed? Right now, a thought might be arising. I'm different. This doesn't apply to me. But that thought, too, came from nowhere. You did not construct it. You witnessed it. Or rather, something did. But what is witnessing? Is there really a watcher behind the thoughts? Or are thoughts simply looping on themselves, watching each other, simulating a center where none exists? There's a term in psychology, the homunculus fallacy, the false idea that there's a little person inside your head pulling the levers. But if there were, it would need a brain of its own. And inside that brain, another homunculus. And so, on an infinite regression of cells, trying to justify a thing that was never there. Consciousness is not a pilot. It's a flashlight beam flickering across a wall of automatic processes. You think you're choosing, you think you're directing, but your sense of agency is just another automatic process, running on delay, retrofitting logic onto instinct. What about your memories? We've already broken those. You can't be the sum of what you remember, because your memories are fictions. So you try to define yourself by feeling. I feel like me. But feelings shift. They betray. They contradict. You have been 1,000 versions of yourself: angry, ashamed, euphoric, numb. Each one claimed to be the real you. Each one vanished. You are a museum of dead selves pretending to be one. Now take a moment. Close your eyes. Search for the self. The body. Not the thoughts. Not the breath. Not the sensations. Find the you who is aware of all this. Where is it? You'll find nothing. Just awareness. Empty. Not a thing. Not a person. Just space. A screen upon which all experience plays, but never a face behind it. Buddhist philosophers have known this for centuries. Anatta, no self. The illusion of self is the root of suffering. You cling to what isn't real. And when that fiction frays through, loss, trauma, aging, you unravel with it. You think you fear death, but what you truly fear is the truth that you've never been alive the way you think. There is no central you watching this unfold. No one steering. No one owning the breath or the hunger or the sadness. The sadness simply is. The breath simply is. Thoughts come. Thoughts go. No thinker. No owner. Only motion. Neurologist Thomas Metzinger said, "The self is not a thing, but a process and ongoing story told by the brain to itself about itself." But what if the story has no author? just language writing. Itself. Just biology, narrating. Just silence, putting on a voice and calling it. You've been told since childhood to be yourself. But there is no self to be. Just a persona shaped by environment, trauma, culture, chemicals. A mask, a performance. And even your rebellion against that mask is still within the script. You say, but I feel real. So does the actor in the middle of the scene. But when the curtain falls, who are you without your lines? What's left when the self you defend turns out to be a void with a name tag? Language is the virus that reprograms you. Without permission, you think in words. You feel in words. You believe you are the words in your head. But you forget the most important fact. You did not invent language. Language invented you. You were born into it. Before you had thoughts, you had sounds. Labels. Names. The architecture of your mind was written not in logic or reason, but in grammar, syntax, sentence. Your consciousness is not pure awareness. It is language structured into internal monologue. Thought is not the origin of language, is the cage that thought grows in. You cannot think outside language. You can only feel the pressure of its walls. Start here. Children raised without. Language, whether isolated or feral, never develop full cognitive function. Without words, they cannot abstract, cannot categorize, cannot build complex identity. Their minds remain opaque. Language is not how we express thoughts. It is what makes thought possible. It is the software of the self. And yet, it's full of bugs. Consider this. Every word you use carries decades, even centuries, of hidden assumptions. The word truth, the word freedom, the word self. These are not clean tools. They are dripping with cultural residue, tainted by misuse, warped by politics, religion, trauma. You believe you're speaking clearly. You believe you know what you mean. But the words were dirty before they reached your mouth. And worse, words simplify what is unspeakable. You say sadness, and you trap 1,000 shades of grief into a single label. You say love, and you erase nuance, timeline, contradiction. You take something vast and dynamic and cut it down to fit a sentence. Language shrinks reality, and yet you live in that shrinkage. You are the story you tell yourself. But that story is told in language, which means yourself, your beliefs, your values, your past is just a set of repeating phrases, constantly rewritten, constantly corrupted by the limitations of vocabulary. But language doesn't just limit, it rewires. Studies in linguistic relativity show that speakers of different languages perceive time, space, even color differently. Some languages divide time into units of weight. Others use cardinal directions instead of left or right. Some languages have no word for past. Some have no future tense. If your language changed, you would change. Your perception is entangled in your speech. Even morality. Even memory. You say, I remember that clearly, but the act of putting a memory into words changes it. The moment you narrate, you modify. The act of describing an emotion dilutes the emotion. Words are not containers. They are corrosive. Think of trauma. Some people cannot speak their trauma, not because they're unwilling, but because language cannot bear the weight. And so the experience festers in silence, unspoken, undigested, untouched by the logic of sentence. But here's the deeper horror. Language thinks for you, the words you've heard, read, repeated. They lodge in your mind like malware. You repeat slogans. You absorb ideologies. You mistake the structure of a sentence for the structure of reality. You say, I believe in freedom. But what do you mean? Whose definition of freedom? Whose metaphors shaped that belief? Do you even know where your thoughts come from? Propaganda lives in the grammar, culture programs, the idioms. Even your resistance is framed by the language available to you. You say, I want to find myself. But find assumes there is something hidden. Self assumes a core. Language pushes you toward certain questions while making others invisible. You do not speak language. Language speaks you. It arranges your perception into binary oppositions: good, bad, true, false, right, wrong. It pretends reality fits neatly into these boxes. But the world is not binary. The world is contradiction, overlap, recursion, chaos. Language cannot contain it, and yet you persist. You write journals. You explain yourself. You perform internal monologues, all in words. You are narrating a movie that was never filmed, but the narration feels real. It feels like you, because you've never met the silence beneath the sentence. You say, I know who I am. But that sentence is just another echo in the language virus looping through your mind. So if language built your thoughts, shaped your identity, filtered your emotions, defined your memories, and carved your morality, then what exactly are you? Without words? And if you stopped speaking, stopped thinking in language, stopped narrating the endless monologue inside your skull, what would be left to call alive? Belief is the mirror that lies to itself. You believe things. You believe the sun will rise tomorrow. You believe gravity will keep you tethered to Earth. You believe certain people love you. You believe you have a self, a soul, a purpose, a past. You believe because not believing would leave you screaming into silence. But belief is not knowledge. It is not evidence. It is not truth. Belief is a survival strategy. It is the scaffolding your mind builds to keep from collapsing under the weight of ambiguity, of fear, of the endless unknown. Let's start simple. You believe things because your brain was designed to detect patterns. Evolution favored organisms that saw cause and effect, even where none existed. Better to mistake rustling grass for a predator than to die from accuracy. So now you see patterns in everything. You call it intuition, but it's just probability bias. You believe in karma, in fairness, in everything happens for a reason. But the universe doesn't play by your rules. It doesn't owe you symmetry. It doesn't reward virtue or punish cruelty. And yet you impose structure. You inject meaning because the alternative randomness is unbearable. But go deeper. The philosopher William James said, belief creates the actual fact. He meant that what you believe shapes how you act, and how you act shapes the world. If you believe you're worthless, you treat yourself that way. Others follow. A belief fulfills itself. But this is not truth. This is a loop. Belief is recursive. It creates the world it expects. You believe someone hates you. You read their silence as proof. You believe you'll fail. You sabotage your own attempt. You believe you're broken. And so you are. But if beliefs build themselves through confirmation, then what happens when the original belief is wrong? It doesn't matter. Once installed, belief resists contradiction. It filters out dissonance. This is confirmation bias. You see what aligns with your belief and ignore what doesn't. You think you're seeking truth, but you're seeking validation. Worse, you defend belief as if it's identity. You say, I believe in this, and what you mean is, this is me. So any threat to your belief becomes a threat to your existence. You do not change beliefs easily. You protect them. And when beliefs do change, they rarely do so from logic. They crack under emotional pressure. Crisis, pain, trauma. People leave. Religion's not after reading sacred texts, but after betrayal. They abandon ideologies not from reason, but from lived contradiction. You do not believe because of truth. Believe because it hurts less than doubt. But here's the most unsettling twist. Your beliefs don't even come from you. They are handed to you by parents, by teachers, by culture, by repetition. The beliefs you hold most sacred were likely absorbed. Before you could walk, you did not choose them. They were whispered into you, and now they speak through you. They justify your identity. They give you the illusion of consistency. But even that consistency is false. You hold contradictory beliefs. Right now, without realizing, you believe you are kind, but sometimes act cruel. You believe people deserve forgiveness, but not that one person. You believe life has meaning, but you can't define it. You believe you're free, but act out patterns you never chose. Your mind is a parliament of ghosts, shouting different doctrines in the same voice. So what is belief? It is not agreement. It is not trust. That is a defense against uncertainty. The philosopher Ernest Becker wrote, "To live fully is to live with an awareness of the rumble of terror that underlies everything." Belief is your muffler. It lets you sleep at night. But if beliefs are just coping mechanisms fabricated, absorbed, defended, and irrational, then what do you stand on? If belief is not a mirror of truth, but a mirror reflecting its own reflection, then how do you know anything at all? And if everything you believe is just a trick to avoid seeing the void, then what, exactly, are you still afraid of? Sanity is the consensus hallucination you mistake for reality. Wake up each morning believing you are sane. You function, you talk, you follow rules. You laugh at the right moments. You nod at the right words. But sanity is not what you think it is. It is not clarity. It is not stability. It is not even health. It is permission. Sanity is the agreement, the contract you sign silently every day. I will see what others see. I will hear what they hear. I will not question the stage we all pretend is real. Break that agreement, and you are no longer sane. You are mad. You are delusional. You are dangerous. But what if sanity is the delusion? Let's begin with the basics. Your mind is a simulation engine. It constructs a world inside your skull. It fills in gaps. It predicts. It edits. And it needs feedback from others to stabilize that simulation. Without other people validating your perception, the system unravels. Solitary confinement doesn't break people with violence. It breaks them with silence. Remove consensus, and the mind generates its own voices, its own timelines, its own meaning. It hallucinates because it must. To survive the absence of feedback, now look at the line between sanity and madness. It is not sharp. It is soft. It bleeds. You've hallucinated before. In dreams. In fever. In déjà vu. You've heard your name called when no one was there. You've felt watched when alone. You've had intrusive thoughts you didn't create. And yet you're sane, because you can ignore those glitches. You tuck them beneath the rug of the acceptable. But sanity is a house of cards, built on suppression. Now consider schizophrenia. Not the Hollywood version, the real one. A disorder of perception, of filtering. A floodgate left open. The voices schizophrenics hear are not random. They speak with meaning, with fear, with accusation. They are not foreign. They are internal processes rendered audible. In other words, the same mechanisms that generate your inner voice are generating theirs. Only theirs got louder. And yet you judge. You call them broken. You call yourself whole. But what is wholeness when your own mind is made of fragments? Consider this. Sanity is often defined by behavior, not thought. If you think the world is ending, but still pay rent, you're eccentric. If you act on it, you're institutionalized. Behavior, not belief. determines your status, which means sanity is surveillance. You are watched into conformity. Even language enforces sanity. We say, come to your senses. We say, be reasonable. But what we mean is, return to the consensus. Consensus is the cage, and when everyone around you agrees on the dream, it becomes reality. This is why cults feel real to insiders. This is why conspiracy theorists cling so hard. This is why delusion grows strongest when reinforced. Sanity is not the absence of madness. It is shared madness, finely tuned to pass as normal. But what happens when the world itself is insane? What happens when cruelty is legal? When lies are policy? When violence is celebrated on screens, but honesty is punished? In such a world, too, be sane is to be complicit. To be functional is to be numb. To be well-adjusted is to be blind dot. So what is true sanity? The ability to see clearly, or the ability to play along? And if your thoughts are managed, your behavior conditioned, your feelings monitored, your inner life suppressed, then what, exactly, is left of you that was ever sane? Meaning is the puppet you worship to avoid the abyss you wake up each day believing there is a reason, a purpose, that your actions echo somewhere beyond the moment, that the pain has a point, that the love matters, that your life is not random, but meaning is not a truth you find. It's a story you invent, a comfort, a shield, a desperate distraction from the infinite collapse beneath your feet. Let's begin with biology. The human brain is not wired for meaning. It's wired for survival. You evolved to detect threats, seek patterns, reduce uncertainty. When faced with the vast randomness of existence, you instinctively impose structure. You give chaos a name. You give pain a function. You say, this happened for a reason. But what you mean is, I need this to feel like it meant something. This is not insight. It is coping. Now consider Viktor Frankl, who survived Auschwitz and wrote, he who has a why can bear almost any how. It's true. Belief in meaning sustains you, but it also blinds you. You stop seeing what is and start seeing what must be. You become addicted to why. But meaning is elastic. What meant everything to you 5 years ago is now dust. The love that defined you, the job that consumed you, the mission that drove you, all abandoned, replaced, forgotten. And yet you construct new ones over and over. You call this growth. But it's just reconstruction over the same pit, because meaning is not a universal force. It does not exist outside your mind. There is no cosmic ledger, no scoreboard, no grand narrative tracking your pain and weighing it against the stars. And still, you invent gods. You turn suffering into sacrifice. You say, everything happens for a reason, because the alternative that it doesn't would leave you. Paralyzed. You seek purpose in career, in family, in fame, in service. And when those collapse, you find new idols: spirituality, legacy, authenticity, healing. But each one is just a new way to deny the silence. Even nihilism becomes a trap. The belief that nothing matters is still a belief, still a framework, still a meaning. You cannot escape it. You are wired to assign meaning. But what if the wiring is broken? What if meaning isn't something noble, but something pathological? What if it's the mind's way of tricking itself into carrying on when the data suggests it shouldn't? What if the need for meaning is a malfunction, a side effect of too much self-awareness? You see a dead animal on the road and feel nothing. You see a stranger cry in a parking lot and feel uneasy. You see a cloud pass over the moon and feel awe. And then you write a story to explain these moments. You say, this is why I exist. But the story is always retrofitted, always fiction. And here's the final twist. If meaning is constructed and constantly reconstructed, then it is also inherently unstable. You are building cathedrals on sand. The day will come when the meaning collapses. The job ends. The relationship shatters. The faith fails. The body deteriorates. And the narrative no longer fits. What then? You patch it. You reframe it. You lie to yourself again. Because the alternative is the abyss. But the abyss was always there, Dot. So now ask yourself, if meaning is just a puppet dancing in front of the void, if every purpose you've clung to was a mask for the unbearable truth, then what is the silence behind it trying to say? Choice is the curtain pulled over the machinery. You say, I chose. You say, I decided. You believe in agency, in autonomy, in that sacred internal compass that points you forward through the fog. But you didn't choose your genes. You didn't choose your childhood. You didn't choose your brain chemistry, your traumas, your triggers, your cravings, your fears. And if you didn't choose the forces that shaped you, what exactly is the you that's doing the choosing? Start with neuroscience. Studies show that your brain initiates decisions before you're consciously aware of them. In the famous Libet experiment, brain activity predicting a decision occurs several hundred milliseconds before subjects report. Having made the choice, your conscious mind is late to its own party. You act, and then you explain. Free will, then, is not a driver. It is a narrator, Dot. It takes the outputs of unconscious processes and weaves them into a tidy illusion of control. You say, I did this because I wanted to. But the wanting emerged from nowhere. It was served to you like a script, and you read it proudly like it was yours. But the script was written by biology, by environment, by cause and effect chains that stretch back to before you were born. Imagine a machine, a vast network of gears, switches, triggers. Each gear is a belief, a memory, a hormonal impulse, a fear you haven't examined. You are not standing outside the machine. You are inside it. You are it. The self is just the echo chamber where these gears grind against each other. Still think you're in control? Ask yourself, why do you like the people you like? Why do you crave what you crave? Why do you fear what you fear? Why do you say what you say? You don't know. You post-rationalize your taste, your guilt, your desires, all puppeteered by algorithms evolved to maximize reproductive fitness in a world that no longer exists. And yet, you call this freedom. But even if we pretend choice exists, how free is it, really? You choose between options someone else gave you, between identities society offers, between futures capitalism markets, between morals religion hands you. You are not choosing. You are selecting from pre-curated paths, and then pretending that selection makes you sovereign. But choice is a trap. It creates blame. It makes you say, this is my fault. When things fall apart, it creates shame. It says, you could have done otherwise when your wiring insured. You never would. But worst of all, choice creates the illusion of self, because if you are not choosing, then what are you? You are not the author of your thoughts. You are not the decider of your dreams. You are not the master of your urges. You are a passenger with a false steering wheel, convinced that turning it changes direction, so then what remains? If every decision is predetermined by a cascade of factors you never controlled, if every yes or no was wired into you by forces you cannot name, if your freedom is just a curated illusion, generated by a brain trying to survive, then what is left of your morality, of your guilt, of your pride? If you are always going to do exactly what you did, then how can you say you ever truly chose? Identity is the costume you forgot you were wearing. You say, this is who I am. But who is a mask and I am is a performance. You walk through the world cloaked in labels, name, nationality, profession, gender, beliefs, traumas, dreams. You repeat these words until they feel real, until they feel like you. But they are not you. They are a patchwork of expectations, a collage of roles. You are the actor who mistook the mask for a face. Let's begin with memory again, because identity feeds on it. Without memory, there is no self. The amnesiac wakes into a vacuum, a body without a narrative. Their self is gone, not their hands, not their breath, but their story. And identity is just that, a story told in symbols. Its symbols are not fixed. They're interpreted, rewritten, translated, misused. You say, I am a good person. But what is good? By whose measure? Based on what context? In what language? You say, I am Pakistani. But what is a nation? A border? A flag? A legal designation? A culture built by people you've never met and rituals you never chose? Strip away the label, and the self begins to flicker. Even gender, often felt as essential, is a performance. Judith Butler called it a repeated stylization of the body, a learned act reinforced every day, not a truth. A habit. And yet it feels innate. Because repetition creates weight. Identity forms, like sediment layers, pressed by years of reinforcement. But sediment is not stone. It crumbles. Look closer. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago. Not emotionally, not cognitively, not biologically. Your values changed. Your tastes evolved. Your thoughts matured or regressed. And yet, you say, that was still me. But who, exactly, is me when the self changes more often than the weather? If you were born in another country, in another era, in another family, you would be someone else entirely. Different language, different beliefs, different memories, different fears. So where is the core? What is constant? What thread runs through? All your versions? There isn't one. The Buddhist concept of anatta non-self declares that identity is an illusion born from clinging. You grasp at preferences. You hold on to roles. You insist, this is me, but look beneath the surface, and there is only process, emotion, thought, sensation, nothing fixed, nothing personal. The mind says, I am. But I is just the echo of yesterday's thoughts trying to remain relevant. Psychologists refer to the narrative self, the internal biography you edit constantly. You highlight successes. You hide shame. You rewrite motivation. You fictionalize identity to make it coherent. And coherence is a lie. You are not a singular person. You are many. You are the angry version of yourself that others have seen, but you don't recognize. You are the fake smile you wore at the funeral. You are the contradictory thoughts you suppress during prayer. You are the versions you forget to include in your story. And all of them feel true when they appear. So who is the real one? Which mask is your face? Which version of you stands trial for the rest? And if all versions are contextual, fluid, and stitched together by faulty memory and cultural expectation, then what is left when the costumes fall? If you strip away your roles, your story, your labels, your preferences, your traumas, what remains? Death is the mirror that shows you were never alive. You walk through life with death as a distant idea, an event that happens to others, a future punctuation mark. You fear it, you avoid it, you delay it, but you don't understand it, because to understand death would be to undo your illusion of life. You imagine death as the end, a moment, the lights going out, you stop breathing, your heart stops beating, the body cools. But what you miss, what you avoid, is that you are never alive in the way you think. You believe in continuity, in a self that began somewhere, moved through time, and will end. But that line doesn't exist. Because you don't exist. Only the process does. Cells replacing cells. Thoughts replacing thoughts. The you who's afraid of dying is not the same you who is born. There has never been a stable thing to preserve. Only motion, so what dies? Not the body. The body recycles, not the mind. The mind dissolves, not the soul. There's no evidence it was ever there. Death is not an event. It's the moment the simulation can no longer convince itself that the projection is real. You are already dying. Every second, neurons degrade, telomeres shorten, proteins misfold. Entropy seeps into the machine. You call it aging. But aging is slow motion dying. And still you pretend there is a you inside watching it happen. But who is watching? Have you ever touched the observer? Have you ever found the one behind the eyes? Or are you just the flickering display, pretending there's a witness behind the screen? When you say, I don't want to die, what you mean is, I don't want to vanish. I don't want to stop being me. But the illusion of me is already breaking. You forget. You distort. You become a stranger to yourself. Your name means less over time. Your memories fade. Your image in the mirror becomes unfamiliar, and yet you say, I am alive. What you are is animated, not alive. Not in the permanent, meaningful way you imagine. You are a temporary phenomenon, a flash of complexity, a ripple in molecules pretending to be a person. And then the pattern ends, not suddenly, not ceremonially, but quietly. What scares you is not death, it's absence. The absence of thought, the absence of I, the absence of presence. But absence is all there's ever been. The universe existed for billions of years before you arrived, and it will continue for billions more. You are a blink, a shiver in the dark, a question that forgets it asked itself. Death is not the opposite of life. It is the end of illusion. The moment the dream stops pretending God, and if you were never truly alive, if you were just a hallucination shaped by cells and syntax, then what is it that thinks it will die? The universe does not know you are. Here you look at the stars and feel something. Awe, longing, significance. You imagine they're watching. That the cosmos holds your pain, your wishes, your prayers. You call it God or destiny or energy. You whisper your secrets into the dark and hope it hears you. But the truth is this, the universe does not know you exist. It has never heard your name. It does not see your tears. It will not remember your stories because the universe is not watching. It is not aware. It is not even listening. It just is. You are not summoned. You are not placed here with purpose. You emerged accidentally on a pale dot, clinging to one of a billion spinning rocks, orbiting one of 100 billion stars in one of 100 billion galaxies. And you think this is about you? You want meaning in a system governed by probability. You want kindness from physics. You want justice from chemistry. But the cosmos is not moral. It is not cruel. It is not compassionate. It is indifferent. It expands. It collapses. Stars explode. Planets freeze. Time dilates. Matter warps. And none of it pauses when you suffer. Your grief does not ripple into space. Your heartbreak does not alter gravity. And yet you behave as though the universe owes you coherence. It DOE sen. Single quotes T. It gave you atoms. It gave you entropy. It gave you silence. The rest was your invention. Even Earth, your home, is temporary. The sun will swallow it. Every book will burn. Every language will vanish. Every name will be erased. Even the name human. And if there are others out there, beings with minds, civilizations, stars of their own, they will never find you. Not because you are hidden, but because you are insignificant. You are not a message in a bottle. You are the foam on the wave, disappearing as soon as it forms. Still you say, I matter. I leave a mark. I touched someone. But memory dies with the brain. Legacy dies with the species. You can't be remembered forever when there is no forever. And still, you hope there's a plan, that you are meant, that the alignment of stars means something, that the patterns you see are signals, but patterns are just your mind begging for structure. Meaning is your fear of chaos wearing a mask. The universe did not write your story. It didn't write any story. You are not placed. You were assembled molecule by accident, and you will be disassembled the same way. Not because you failed, not because you sinned, not because you were forgotten, but because everything DISASSMB LES dot. And so now you are left with the question, if the universe does not know I'm here and never will, then what is the echo inside me pretending that it matters? Time is the cage that you call reality. You say, I have time. You say, time heals. You say, my time will come. But time is not yours. It never was. It is not something you possess. It is the prison you cannot escape. You are not moving through time. Time is moving through you. Every second, it burns you. It eats your cells. It distorts your memory. It carves lines into your face. And yet you worship it. You build clocks. You measure your worth in hours. You celebrate anniversaries, count down birthdays, obsess over futures that never arrive. But time doesn't care that it doesn't stop. It doesn't pause when you suffer. It doesn't rewind when you regret. It doesn't accelerate when you're bored or slow down when you're in love. It is not with you. It is against you. Now ask yourself, what is time really? Is it a flow? A river? A line? No. Time is perception. In Einstein's universe, time is elastic. It warps under gravity. It slows near black holes. It speeds up in the void. There is no universal now. Your now is not someone else's now. There is no shared present. So what is the moment you're living in? A glitch, a delay. By the time you perceive anything, it's already past. Your consciousness is lagging. You are always late to your own life. Even worse, your mind distorts time constantly. Moments of trauma stretch into infinity. Years of routine collapse into nothing. Time is not objective. It bends around emotion, repetition, novelty. And so, your life is not a straight line. It is a series of fragments, misremembered and misarranged. You think you are aging forward, but what you're really doing is drifting unmoored from one distortion to another. The ancient Greeks had two words for time: chronos, the mechanical ticking of the clock, and kairos, the felt sense of time, the sacred opening, the irreversible. Instant, you live by chronos, but you're haunted by kairos. You chase schedules. You obey deadlines. You define success by how well you manage time. But time is managing you. It is undoing you, one breath at a time, one unnoticed second at a time, one memory erased, one cell corrupted, and yet you believe in the future. You say, someday. You say, tomorrow. But tomorrow is fiction. It never arrives. It's always out of reach. A dangling promise the machine feeds you so you'll keep moving. Even the past is a lie. You remember it wrong. You shape it into story. You use it to justify today. But the actual past? Gone. Irretrievable. Vapor. You are trapped in a sliver of time, so thin it can't even be measured. And still you plan. And still you regret. And still you say, there's time. But time is the razor sliding across your throats, slowly, constantly, without pause. And when it finishes, you won't even know it happened. So now, answer this. If time is an illusion, if memory is false, if the future is vapor, and the present is always already gone, then where are you really? And what is left of reality when its only axis dissolves? Memory is the lie that keeps you functioning. You think your past is real. You think it's stored somewhere safe, accurate, intact, yours. You say, I remember. But what you mean is, I've rehearsed a distortion so often. I forgot it isn't the truth. Memory is not a recording. It is not a file waiting to be played back. It is reconstruction, a guess, an improvisation performed by a fallible brain trying to maintain the illusion of continuity. And each time you recall a memory, you change it. Every detail, every color, every smell, every tone of voice rewritten. Your brain doesn't retrieve memories, it reassembles them, and then resaves the edited version, discarding the original dot. So what is your past? A palimpsest, a decayed manuscript written over 1,000 times, a forged document posing as autobiography. Even your most cherished moments, your first love, your childhood wonder, the moment you believed in something, are fictions. Not because they never happened, but because what remains bears no resemblance to what actually did. But you cling to them, because they are your anchor. Without memory, the self dissolves. Without continuity, you are just a flickering state, a chemical moment. A now without context. Amnesia patients prove this. They forget their names, their families, their birthdays, and with that forgetting, they become strangers to themselves. Memory is identity. So when you say, I know who I am, what you mean is, I trust the stories I've told myself about what happened. But what if those stories are wrong? What if the moment you think made you strong actually broke you? What if the love you cherish was never returned? What if the villain in your life wasn't them, but you? And deeper still, what if the trauma you carry isn't yours? False memories exist, easily implanted. Even therapists, even parents, even your own mind can insert experiences that never occurred. And once they're in, they feel real, emotionally, biologically, viscerally. So now, how do you tell the real from the false? You can't, because even real memories are soaked in bias. You remember from your perspective, from your mood, from your current understanding. And all those things change. Memories don't preserve the past. They rewrite it to serve the present. Your brain does not want accuracy. It wants coherence. So it edits. It fills gaps. It censors. It exaggerates. And you call this truth. Even worse, some of your memories were never encoded in the first place. You think you remember being born. You don't. You think you remember a dream. You don't. You think you remember your motivations. You never did. Most of what you call memory is narrative speculation. The past is a ghost you dress up to keep your present sane. But what happens when the memories fade? Not all at once, but slowly. Names slip. Faces blur. A chronology dissolves. You forget what happened first. You forget how you felt. You forget who you were. And then you are still here. But you are no longer you. So what holds you together? What identity is left when the glue of memory decays? And if everything you know about yourself is built on recall, but recall is unreliable and corruptible and fictional, then who is remembering you into existence? Language is the illusion that thought can be shared. You speak, you write, you say, I understand you. You say, let me explain. But every word you use is a crude approximation, a symbol standing in for something vast, private, and untranslatable. You think language reveals, but it hides. You think it clarifies, but it compresses. You think it connects, but it separates. Let's begin where all thought begins, within the body. Before the word, there is sensation. Before the sentence, there is emotion. Before communication, there is a raw pulse of experience that cannot be converted into phonemes. Without distortion, you feel grief, but you don't feel the word grief. You feel the choking, the tightness, the slow decay dot, and yet you reduce it to 5 letters. You say, "I'm sad," but that is a lie. You are not sad. You are 1,000 unnamed textures, a storm of neural firings and biochemical surges, centuries of evolutionary pain manifesting in silence. But you have to say something, so you pick a word. You flatten the experience. You destroy it just to be understood. But are you understood? When you say love, do you mean the same thing they mean? When you say God, are you pointing to the same sky? When you say I, are you speaking from the same void? No, because language is not objective. It is cultural, contextual, personal, imprecise. Each word carries a private world of associations, memories, wounds, and myths. You do not hear what I say. You hear what you expect me to mean. And so every conversation is a translation between 2 illusions. Even now this very sentence is not transmitting truth. It is triggering a series of guesses in your mind. You're not understanding me. You're hallucinating your own version of what I meant. This is why meaning fails. This is why people scream at each other using the same words with opposite meanings. This is why no one ever truly feels heard. Language is a shared hallucination of brittle bridge, built from mismatched bricks. And yet we worship it. We write sacred texts and call them eternal. We swear oaths. We craft constitutions. We etch our names into stone, hoping they'll echo into forever. But the words will fade. The grammar will shift. The definitions will erode. And one day, no one will even recognize your sounds. Because even language dies. It evolves. It mutates. It forgets. English was once Latin. Latin was once Greek. Before that, gesture. Before that, silence. And what about thought? You believe your thoughts come in language. But this is backward. Language follows thought. And thought follows sensation. And sensation follows impulse. And impulse follows what? The origin is unreachable. The root of the thought is always hidden. You don't control your words. They emerge. You don't shape your sentences. They arrange themselves. You are not speaking, you are being spoken. And if that's true, if your words are echoes of impulses you don't control, filtered through symbols no one fully agrees on, tossed into the void hoping someone else's hallucination matches yours, then what is communication really? And how can you ever claim to be understood?